deep within the ancient, unspoken archives of the celestial realms, where the very fabric of creation hums with forgotten symphonies, lies a tale so profoundly veiled in shadow that the seraphim themselves avert their gazes and the archons seal their lips in solemn vow. It is a narrative etched not in scrolls of gold or tablets of thunder, but in the silent fractures of divine will, a story of fracture, of forbidden compassion, of a love that dared to bridge the unbridgeable chasm between glory and perdition. Whispers persist among the eternal hosts. There existed one luminous being, a sentinel of the sacred chorus who, in the cataclysmic hour when the Almighty decreed the irrevocable fall of the morning star, did not recoil in unified reverence. Nay, he advanced where legions retreated, his form a solitary beacon against the tidal wave of judgment. This was no insurrectionist cloaked in veils of deceit, no ally to the insurgent throngs plummeting into the yawning maw of exile. He sought neither mutiny nor allegiance to the damned. In his essence burned a singular, audacious flame, the desperate yearning to redeem a soul already consigned to irrevocable oblivion. Yet, oh, the inexorable price of such temerity! For in the immutable hierarchy of the Empyrean spheres, fealty transcends mere devotion. It is the unyielding cornerstone of cosmic order, the breath that sustains the stars in their orbits. And affection, that most exalted of virtues, when it strays from the prescribed path of sanctity, morphs into the gravest heresy, an insurrection garbed in the tender guise of benevolence. It invites not benediction, but the searing gaze of celestial tribunal. Who was this audacious luminary, this outlier among the flawless? What tempests raged within his immortal core to propel him towards such peril? And in the inexorable machinery of divine retribution, what fate did the Creator himself ordain for the celestial who presumed to extend salvation's hand to the adversary incarnate? This is the chronicle of the angel who dared to salvage Lucifer from the brink, and in so doing, invoked the unyielding ire of the divine. Welcome, seekers of the arcane and the anointed, to Bible Mysteries, your portal to the enigmas that pulse beneath the surface of sacred scripture, where the ink between the lines bleeds with untold wonders and warnings. Before we plunge into this labyrinth of light and shadow, if this prelude has stirred the embers of curiosity in your spirit, igniting questions that linger like dawn's first blush, then pause for a sacred moment, bestow a like upon this vessel of revelation, subscribe to our fellowship of inquirers, and summon the bells. Clarion call to ensure no future mystery evades your vigilant heart. It is chronicled in the veiled annals of pre-creation lore that the celestial conflict, the war in the heights culminated, not in mere conflagration, but in a radiance so incandescent, so profoundly overwhelming, that it etched tremors into the very constellations, causing the fixed stars to quiver like leaves in a tempest of divine fury. As the reverberations of sedition's clamor subsided into ethereal hush, the bastions of paradise reclined not in triumphant serenity, but in a profound, collective stupefaction, a stunned vigil over the scars of schism. In this bifurcated tableau, every scion of the heavenly order had irrevocably aligned, the steadfast legions, paragons of unwavering piety, arrayed themselves in reverent phalanxes beneath the unassailable luminescence of the eternal throne, their auras intermingling in a symphony of unblemished fidelity. Conversely, the adherents of the resplendent insurgent, Lucifer the light-bearer, were inexorably drawn into the vortex of obloquy, engulfed by an inferno primordial and profane, a blaze antithetical to the essence of their once immaculate lineage, devouring their splendor in a maelstrom of ashen lament. Yet, amid this sepulchral interregnum, where the air itself seemed to hold its breath in deference to the Almighty's verdict, one solitary figure defied the inexorable tide of conformity. He lingered, an enigmatic sentinel, perched upon the precipitous threshold of the pearly expanse, the grand, iridescent portals that demarcate the sanctified from the profane. His gaze, unyielding and laced with an anguish that transcended celestial composure, traced the inexorable exodus of the vanquished, cohorts of kindred spirits, companions with whom he had once harmonized in the antiphonal praises that wove the warp and weft of existence, now rent asunder from their celestial moorings. Their descents were symphonies of despair wails that pierced the veil of infinity, plummeting into the insatiable gullet of perpetual obscurity. His extremities, those elegant appendages forged in the crucibles of creative fiat, quivered not from the chill of trepidation, but from the seismic rupture of an organ no immortal should possess, a heart, fracturing under the deluge of irrevocable severance. As his brethren methodically reintegrated into the rigid hierarchies of adoration, wings meticulously furled, countenances forged in the adamantine mold of providential stoicism, the firmament proclaimed its ablution complete. Retribution had been meted with precision. The cosmic ledger balanced in strokes of luminous equity, but to this anomalous guardian, equity resonated not as the balm of enlightenment, but as the bitter gall of bereavement, a void that echoed with the ghosts of what once was. Compelled by an inexorable magnetism, he pivoted toward the vertiginous gulf yawning beneath the firmament's hem, where the coruscating splendor of paradise dissolved into roiling billows of condemnatory vapor, thick and choking as the sighs of forsaken epics. Amid the churning maelstrom of the chasm's nadir, his vision honed by eons of unerring acuity discerned a fleeting apparition, the erstwhile paragon. Lucifer, his former visage of transcendent effulgence, now contorted in the throes of consumptive holocaust, a tragic effigy wreathed in the pyres of his own hubris. Then, cleaving the firmament like the clarion of finality's decree, resounded a proclamation that brooked no dissent: "It is finished." The timbre of the omnipotent, resolute as the bedrock of being, unshakable as the axioms of arithmetic, heralded the terminus of tumult. Notwithstanding this irrevocable coda, the sentinel faltered. Verbal remonstrance eluded him, restrained by the sanctity of hierarchy. Yet, in the sanctum of his innermost sanctum, a susurrus burgeoned, burgeoning to eclipse the oppressive quietude of the spheres. What if redemption's thread yet dangles within reach? What if grace, that boundless ocean, could lap at the shores of even this desolation? This interrogative ember was the genesis of cataclysm, a cogitation so anathema to the celestial canon that it constituted existential apostasy, clemency extended to the irrevocably arraigned. He endeavored to exorcise it, invoking the litany of Lucifer's transgression, the vainglory that had metastasized into mutiny, the volitional seal upon his doom. Yet his core rebelled against quiescence, as though a laceration had sundered the integument of his quintessence. Hemorrhaging empathy where orthodoxy demanded indifference, visions assailed him, vignettes from the primordial dawn, when Lucifer, unmarred by ambition's blight, had intoned anthems in proximate exaltation beside the sovereign seat, their voices entwining in polyphonic rapture that birthed galaxies from the void. In that antediluvian harmony, luminescence knew no partition. The Empyrean bore no cicatrices of discord. Now, this reminiscence metastasized into spectral torment, a lancet to his unyielding vigil. He shuddered his orbs, pinions undulating in paroxysms of inner strife. Encircling him, the host intoned paeans of conquest, their cadences cascading like conflagrations, unbound rivers of sonorous incandescence that should have enraptured, but consonants eluded him. Each laudatory inflection weighed upon his spirit like millstones of incongruity, verging on sacrilege. Compulsion drew his scrutiny once more to the vertiginous profundity, and therein transpired an anomaly that transfixed, kinetic obscurity, a faltering gesticulation amid the perdition's throng. Lucifer himself, the architect of schism, extended tendrils toward the vestigial gleam above. a futile insurrection against the gravitational inexorability of endless tenebras it vedat. In that ephemeral epiphany, fidelity capitulated to fervor. A solitary stride propelled him forward, an infinitesimal transgression that reverberated through the celestial lattice. The ambient radiance vacillated, a paroxysm as if the firmament interrogated his volition. His peers pivoted in unison, their perceptual acuity attuned to the aberration. Hesitation. That insidious serpent coiled within obedience's garden perilous. Unprecedented. From their midst emerged a colossus of martial splendor, his orbs ablaze with auric inferno. Intoning, kin of the eternal vigil, whither thy trajectory? The decree is sealed. The balance restored. Silence cloaked the querent, for elucidation evaded articulation. His compass was uncharted. Sole certitude. Inaction was untenable, a complicity in annihilation's theater, even for the most execrable of the exiled. For the inaugural epoch since the fiat of Genesis, a denizen of the sublime queried not the sovereignty of the divine, but the adamantine terminus of his edict, a fissure in the monolith of predestination. Beneath his breath, a supplication escaped. Sovereign of infinities, might compassion yet inscribe its verse upon judgment's unyielding scroll? The vaulted expanses convulsed, not in fulmination, but in a profundity more lacerating. Paternal chagrin, a cosmic sigh that permeated the pleroma. He internalized it. The Empyrean internalized it. Cessation proved impossible. Pinions unfurled in resplendent array, aggregating photic tempests akin to solar coronas. He cast a valedictory glance toward the throne's apotheosis. His visual cortices brimmed not with seditious ire, but with presmetic lacrime effluent, testaments to irreconcilable duality. Thus initiated his peregrination, a volitional plumage into the prescribed domain, the infernal crevasse where sanctity's spectrum extinguishes. This was no precipitate cascade of disgrace. It was genuflection incarnate, a perpetual oblation to the imperatives of his lacerated essence. In the name of Eros divine, of eleemosynary grace, of fraternal reclamation amid the wreckage, the celestial assembly beheld his effacement into obscurity. Paralyzed by incomprehension, none ventured pursuit, for the precipice loomed as anathema. Bewilderment reigned, benevolence or perfidy, indeterminate. Yet, the firmament had borne witness to novelty incarnate, perilous innovation. Laced with the quintessence of mortal frailty, the audacity to empathize with the irredeemable, the Empyrean's irradiance receded akin to a solar occlusion. Each undulation of his appendages resounding in the vacuum's maw progressively languid, encumbered, as if the gravitas of transgression manifested as spectral fetters. Heretofore, obscurity was alien to his tapestry. In paradise, Umbri capered in balletic grace, refracting prisms of perpetual dawn. Here, in the substratum of sanction, tenebrosity was rapacious, engulfing, unyielding. A voracious entity that subjugated luminescence without quarter. Descent amplified the auditory void. No melismatic hosannas. No zephyrs of seraphic breath. No omnipresent emanation of the noumenal solely fragmented resonances. Attenuated wails ensnared in temporal eddies. Echoes of anguish denied egress. His innate refulgence attenuated, the hallmark of paradisiacal provenance flickering like a candle besieged by gales. Apprehension burgeoned for the inaugural instance. Ambiguity clouded omniscience. Did the divine vigil persist, or had the countenance of eternity averted in irrevocable estrangement? Progenitor of all that is, he murmured, timbre quavering amid the abyss. Should my presumption merit extinguishment, quench this vestige. Yet should clemency endure in thy boundless repository, ignited anew as Pharos against this pall, the pleroma proffered no riposte. His trajectory persisted, not as insurgent defiance, but as protracted orison traversing strata of obsolescent dominions where chronology stagnated in stasis. Photism relegated to atavistic recollection. Abruptly, a sibilance intruded, not harmonious but splintered, akin to Zephyr's lacerating vitrified remnants. For what purpose dost thou intrude upon this domain of desolation? Suspension seized him mid-plumage, perceptual sweeps dissecting the gloom. Ambient flux coalesced into morphology's spectral semblances approximating angelic contours, yet warped, eviscerated, pinions incinerated to obsidian, plumages reduced to cinerary detritus. The expatriates materialized as phantasmagoria, encircling in languid spirals oculi akin to expiring cinders. Visages incised with agonies antedating cosmogony, celestial emissary dispatched anew. One exhibilated, venom lacing the ether, nay, countered another with derisive inflection, affiliation severed. Obeisance forfeited. He elevated extremities not in belligerence, but conciliation. Adversaries I am not. My sojourn seeks reclamation of one among thy shadowed fraternity. Phantasmic cachinnations reverberated, cavernous and evacuated. Then, preeminence emerged from the penumbra, a behemoth of intensified obscurity. Lucifer, erstwhile apotheosis of photism. Now its dilapidated simulacrum vestiges of pulchritude interred beneath strata of interminable putrefaction. His pinions, though carbonized, retained subclinical scintillations of abrogated majesty. Thou hast condescended to this sty? Lucifer's phonation undulated the firmament, a paradox of acridity and equanimity. Affirmative. To what end? To administer condescending solatium. Cranial oscillation negated. To fathom the precipice of thy divergence. Lucifer's rictal contortion mocked, hollow, fathoming exhausted. Volition crystallized. Autonomy elected. Subjugation its inexorable diadem. Subjugation thou termest it. Yet advocacy persists. Obnubilation deepened Lucifer's mien. Comprehension eludes thee, impart it. Then, the emissary implored. Phonation ascending not in contumacy, but visceral yearning. Illumine the catalyst that severed thee from our common architect. Lucifer's scrutiny endured, an Aeonian interlude compressing infinities. Then, sotto voce, for mine own adoration eclipsed the reticence of his decree, the utterance transfixed, excavating strata of hubris, laceration, solitariness. For the premier juncture, the emissary perceived not sedition's mantle, but contrition's undercurrent, a subterranean torrent eroding the facade of fortitude. Lucifer averted, thy presence profanes this exile. Dispatched by edict? Mission aborted. Autonomous descent? Phonetic rupture emulated tempestic peal. Then expatriation claims the irrevocably. Visceral pang convulsed the emissary. Articulation yearned to extol paradise's superlative philanthropy, yet presaged incursion. Thermal surge, thurgic systole cascading from superlunar vaults. Paradisal cognizance activated. Photic incursion sundered the vacuum, not lenitive, but retributive fulguration. Expatriates ululated, dispersing as pre-dawn specters. Lucifer occluded his countenance, trepidation etching even his indomitable frame. The emissary prostrated, inundated by omnipotent efflux. Then, the phonation not fulmination, not indignation, but laceration profounder, chagrin incarnate. Presumptuous extension toward the adjudicated exile? Lacrimation seared, clemency alone motivated. Sovereign, Illimason bereft of subservience transmutes not to agape, but insurgency swathed in philanthropy's veneer. Lucifer recoiled. Spectatorship intolerable, sorrow-suffused orbs ascended. Then consecrate my presumption as expiation. Effulgence subsumed, not annihilative, but denudative. Pinions de-escalated to penumbral, panoply fissured. No precipitous expulsion akin to the light-bearers. No reinstatement to eminence. Residual in liminality, unaffiliated with perdition. Unenidled to sublimity, a perennial vigil betwixt apex and abyss. effaced from litanies, mute, encumbered by dual burdens, philanthropy's legacy and errancy's specter, chronometry, if quantifiable in this interstice, warped idiosyncratically, no auroral advent, no crepuscular retreat, merely an immutable skyline in equipoise, twixt photism and obscurity. Therein he roused, panoply transmuted from aureate to subdued bronze patina of protracted vigil. Pinions, erstwhile immaculate, now chimeric fusion, alabaster veined with sable, luminescence and amnesiac struggle, neither empyrean nor infernal this domain. An intermediary nexus. Ascendance elicited femoral tremor. Latius absent, sole reliquary its embossed imprint. Is this Thanatos? Invocation unanswered. Ambient density freighted with cosmogonic dolors, unvoiced plaints aggregating like atmospheric sediment. Cranium inclined. Supernally, aureate nebulosity luminous excess for gloom. Tenebrous deficit for sacrosanctity. Solitude absolute, yet remembrance latent. From nebulosity, configurations coalesced, phosphorescent soul contours. Adrift as errant firmaments mutterings of orisons, penitences. Ineffable keens predating lexicon, their pathos impaled transcendently, surpassing adamantine incision. Epiphany dawned, not castigatory decree, but teleological mandate, vestigial theurgic reverberation. Clemency craved? Testament thereof thou shalt render. Antecedent unfurled the limen. Slender aureate fluvius demarcating vitality from decease. Psyche's quivered riparian, irresolute in trajectile ambiguity, paradisiacal photism lateral. Condemnatory umbri contralateral, mandate crystallized, not effacement of aberration, but transmutation thereof. Navigation for the disoriented toward quiescence. Irrespective of personal aridity, prostration riverside. Emulating pre-sovereign genuflection, sanctify this oblation as vocation. Thermal zephyr side, empyrean exhalation analog. Thenceforward, vital exodus beheld a liminal custodian, not coruscant paragon, nor terrific apparition, but lenitive presence, orbs gravid with dolorous wisdom, pinions suffused with vespertine ambiguity. Self-disclosure omitted, antecedent veiled. Yet, philanthropy's residue permeated taciturnity, solace in somatic aura. Denominations diverged, veneration for select, trepidation for others. Jeremiel neologist for the necrotic vigil. Lacrimator for empyrean forfeiture and infernal transfiguration, contemporaneous lore avers. At the liminal shroud. The just assimilate a susurrus of reassurance. Apprehend not dismay. Visibility thine. Agape envelops. Absolution proffered. That timbre his provenance. Erstwhile interrogator of adjudication, now philanthropy's conduit through eternal portals. Not iconoclast, not laureate ... but aberration rarer, memento that paradisiacal eros exacts tariff, that diurnal interlude, fluvius serene psyche's meandering aureate miasma akin to foliar zephyrs. Jeremiel prostrated aquiline. Digit traceries perturbing undulations, each wavelet freighted with invocatory freight, mnemonic relic. Pulsatile vestige, solitudinal sanctity ossified into hagiography until atmospheric perturbation. Auditory incision, pinion undulations unanalogous to necrotic flutter potentiate. Coruscant, empyrean pyrrhic, vivacity. Anticipation preceded pivoting. Photism intensified, fluvial reflection amplifying until materialization. Titanic. Panoplated Michael, bellicose archon, paradisiacal bulwark. Jeremiel elevated languidly. Bronze subdued contra Michael's solar conflagration. Taciturnity gravid with millennial stratifications, centuries of unvoiced interrogatives. Michael sundered, the expatriarch yet incantates thy nomenclature. Recollects thee as singular extender. Denominates thee philanthropically insensate, dolorous rictus, perchance veridical. Yet insensates harbor tell us, Michael's scrutiny oscillated, approbation laced with bereavement. Totality imperiled for light spitter. Paradisal effacement viable, imperilment absent, Michael. Oblation tendered reciprocation manifold. Gestural sweep encompassed psyches. Behold, errant, fracturate, blemished. Yet agape suffused for repatriation. Exile thus. Hospitality extended. Michael's purview encompassed scintillating mortal residua. Panoply delustrated, humilitas incarnate. Sotto voce. Perception thine eluded our collective .na-sensation, calibrated to mandate. Taciturnity. Transubstantiated sacrosanct. Michael, amnesia absent in Empyrean, Jeremiel. Castigature for empathy, yet fraternity intact. Inclination. Confirmation to thy mold. Silence notwithstanding. Michael's tactile imposition coronal, photic diffusion, akin to nubilous solar breach. Repatriation interdicted, yet thronally radiance persists. Internalize. Orbs shuttered, lacrimal refraction. Convey. Then. Adoration unabated. Affirmative cranial. Pinions eruptive. Valedictory. Angelicity thine endures, Jerem. Dolor no sophist. Effacement. Residual thermality. Fluvius scrutiny. Psyche's perpetual. Bellicosity craves philanthropy. Supern a remoteness. Divine phonation non-fulminant. Non-juridical, but ratificatory. Sussurrus. Post-bellum Empyrean taciturn. Insurrection consummated. Luciferian cadre expatriated. Ululations atrophied to mnemonic phantasm. Solitary unrest. Jeremiel perimetered radiant steps. Pinions pendulous with prescriptive dubiety, not lassitude. But gravitas of anathema. Fraternal reconstruction. Portcullis reforge. Anthemic undulations emulative of venial waves. Disharmony his soul resonance visceral attrition. Contemplation fixated. Lucifer unmasked as confer chorister adjunct. Cosmogonic visionary, thronal proximal. Audacity crusted, thronal approachment. Envision. Apotheosis radiating decuple stellar coronas, thunderfire enwreathed. Myriad adorants prostrate, ricti obscured photic shrouds. Jeremiel advanced, trepidant, omnipotent, condemnation implored alternate trajectory absent. Empyrean flux. Melisma aborted. Seraphic pivots. Sovereign pulsation, eternal systole. Juridical integrity impugned. Prostration, pinional furl. Impugnment negated, liege. Comprehension solicited. Fraternate antecedent. Sorrow ocular in plumage. Redemptive essence, thine portals eternalized why. Interrogative suspended. Fulgural imminence. Taciturnity protracted. Sovereign not irascible, but cosmogonic pathos. Agape impotent contra recalcitrant pathology. Luminosity lacrimal, amor residualis. Irradiance attenuated, Empyrean dirge. Residualis condemned jeopardizes conjoined plumage. Epiphany. Eros. Donative malediction. Ascendance, phonation thundering quintessence. Residual credence. Redemptive latency for expatriarch. Empyrean observance. Obediential merciful schism. Nocturnal innovation. Empyrean lacryloric droplets, paradisian tesserae. Undetected, yet profundal echo. Infernal nadir. Fracturate silhouette incantated. Jeremiel. Affiliative ligature interred, vitality latent. Eternal diurnals elapsed, atmospheric vestiges melodic detritus. Dutiful reintegration, phonatory alteration. Pulchritude pristine eros, lacerated subvene. Jeremiel, lacrimal progenitor, ineffaceable. Phonation suspended. Ocular humanitas dolorous. Fraternal evasion, empathic contagion obediential. Inarticulacy to cardial rupture. Auroral dissemination. Celestial limen, voidal abutment. Scrutiny non-contumacious introspective. Philanthropy visceral contra juridical imperative. Internal reverberation, perplexity, pathos. Desideratum for leges cardiac, existential ripple. Jeremiel. Photism trepidant non-irate. Non-chagrined, but lacrimogenic serenity. Illimitable antiquity. Castaway purview persists doubt prostration instantaneous. Panoply clangor aureate. Condemnation. Liege, philanthropic aversion impossible, thine emanation. Taciturnity ponderous. Astral anticipation. Phonation soul resculpting. Profunditas amorous. Jeremiel subservience imperative for Elimasan. Inclination intensified. Trepidant. Non-contestation. Metamorphosis irrevocable. Empyrean axiom. Perfection's pathos philanthropic. Juridical philanthropic interstis. Biaxial custodian. Nomenclature occulted descriptive inadequacy. Jeremiel. Undared comprehensor. Punitive amor-visionary. Sovereign discernment. Non-castigatory definition. Non-aberration. Philanthropy Empyrean sundering. Luminosit. Why. In the veiled codices of intermediary vigilance. Jeremiel's odyssey unfolded as tapestry of incremental sanctification. Diurnal vigils by the aureate Fluvius evolved into symposia of the spectral. Psyches not merely ferried, but catechized in the dialectics of contrition and coronation. One such transit etched indelibly a matriarchal essence. Burdened by terrestrial perfidies of avarice and omission, materialized riparian. Her contour a vortex of self-recriminatory tempests. Passage denied me. She wailed, form attenuating in doubt's gale. Shadows claim precedence. Jeremiel's tactile emanation stabilized. Shadows ephemeral. Verity resides in volitional pivot. Recount thy ledger not in accusation, but elucidation. Hesitant narrative cascaded. Epics of acquisitive dominion. Familial fissures wrought by cupidity's blade. Midway, a pivotal interlude a pauper's entreaty spurned. Yet retrospectively haunted. Regret's alchemy transmutes dross to aurum, Jeremiel counseled. Orison invoking photic vignettes. The pauper's unseen benevolence rippling through generations. A subterranean current of inadvertent grace. Thy omission birthed unintended benediction. Behold the harvest. Clarity dawned. Tempest abated. Guidance thine, custodian. Whither now? Coronal ascent, where ledger's residue yields to agape's pleroma. Analogous encounters. Proliferated. A bellicose spectre. Armored in martial residua, brandishing spectral falchions against infernal beckonings. A scholarly wraith, ensnared in intellectual hubris, debating eschatological arcana until humility's key unlocked. Each colloquy fortified Jeremiel's teleology, transmuting exile's attrition into purposeful apotheosis. Yet, interludes of dubiety intruded visitation from Empyrean envoys, not martial Michaels but contemplative Gabriels, bearing missives veiled in parable. The throne queries thy quiescence, one intoned, form a cascade of scroll unfurling light. Doth liminality suffice, or doth terrestrial incarnation beckon? Jeremiel's riposte, tempered by eons. Sufficiency resides not in locale, but legation. Here, in interstis, thy philanthropia manifests unadulterated, unfettered by thronal protocol or abyssal rancor. Approbation tacit, a fleeting coronal gleam, imprinting assurance. Such interludes punctuated the eternal, weaving threads of reconnection into isolation's loom. Concomitantly. Infernal echoes persisted, subterranean susurrations from the chasm's brink. Luciferian phantasmagoria assaying incursion. One nocturnal vigil, as Psyche slumbered in transit's lullaby. A shadowed tendril ascended the Fluvius, coalescing into familiar ruin, the light-bearer's simulacrum. Less accusatory, more inquisitive, thy persistence mocks my perdition. It murmured, form flickering between solidity and spectre. Dost thou fairy shades of what I might have been? Jeremiel, unperturbed, Feriage universal, no exceptions carved for antecedents. Thy narrative, though truncated, informs the codex. Redemption's latency, thy bequest to penitence, a rueful contortion, beacon in obscurity irony's cruel jest. Yet, in thy vigil, I glimpse the silence I once decried, not void, but vessel for unspoken orisons, effacement gradual, tendril retracting. Residual, a fractured gemstone, photic heart of prelapsarian Lucifer. Deposited riparian a talisman against despair. Pulsing with latent reclamation, through such crucibles. Jeremiel's essence refined, no longer mere intercessor, but architect of eschatological bridges spanning not realms alone, but the schism twixt justice and mercy. Legends proliferated among the necrotic throng, whispers of the twilight sentinel, whose tears irrigated the fluvius, fructifying arid psyches, whose silence encapsulated symphonies of forgiveness. Mortals, in extremis, invoked his uncanonical aegis, Jeremiel. Thou who queried the unqueryable, extend thy hand across the veil dot, and in rare convergences. Divine harmonics resonated thronal overtures, manifesting as auroral arches spanning the interstice. Choral vestiges harmonizing with Jeremiel's unspoken litanies. One such epiphany, a celestial convocation projected holographically. Archons debating his legacy, Michael advocating repatriation. Gabriel prudence, Uriel innovation. The interstitial one embodies paradox. Uriel posited, form aflame with prophetic fire. Punishment as promotion. Exile as exal, tati, on. Sovereign phonation. Interjecting. Paradox mine own reflection unity and duality. Let him abide, for in his ache, creation glimpses its own heart. Resolution. Perpetuation with periodic. Communion empyrean tendrils weaving sustenance into liminality. Ensuring Jeremiel's luminescence UNDI MMED. Thus, the chronicle burgeoned, from solitary presumption to cosmic fulcrum. Jeremiel's odyssey, a microcosm of divine dialectic, where love's cost forges eternity's most luminous legacies. As the firmament reclines in its nocturnal vigil, and you lift thine eyes to the celestial tapestry, those distant orbs that have witnessed the theatrics of angels and the hubris of stars, recollect this. Not every lacrima cascading through paradisiacal vaults sprang from anguish's fount. Some, crystalline and profound, precipitated from the alchemical forge of Amor unyielding. Unrepentant, transformative, Jeremiel's saga, though obscured from canonical parchment, resonates in the interstitial silences of Scripture, a parable of presumption redeemed, of a philanthropia that dared interrogate the immutable, emerging not diminished, but divinized. Ponder, seeker, in the grand amphitheater of creation, might even the most precipitous falls harbor redemptive inclines? Could the light-bearer's shadow yet yield to dawn's reclamation? Or does judgment's finality brook no revision? Confer thy meditations in the sanctum of commentary below. Let discourse illuminate our collective quest, should this epic of celestial schism and soulful intercession have enkindled thy spirit's latent fire, igniting yearnings for further forays into the arcane. Then honor this conduit, affix thy approbation via-like, enlist in our subscription cadre for perennial unveilings, and activate the bell's summons to preclude evasion of forthcoming enigmas, until our next convergence in mystery's embrace. May Jeremiel's liminal grace attend thy traversals, illuminating shadows, bridging divides. Shalom and eternal curiosity.